It's great to be here to talk about a passion that we all share, and that is innovation. And it's a great week to be having this annual meeting of the CFI when so much has been declared by way of renewed investment of the federal government. Both the CFI and the CPPIB are, of course, products of innovation and here to stimulate innovation. They represent the crucial role that innovation plays in advancing both economic and social well-being in Canada. CFI and CPPIB were both founded in 1997. Both operate at arm's length from government, yet serve the public interest. Both have clear mandates that demand long-term vision and a commitment to transparency and accountability. For the last 25 years, I've been studying how innovation plays out in the international context and Canada's position in that regard. This international engagement is amplified in my new role as chairperson of CPPIB, an organization that searches around the globe to find the best long-term investment opportunities. In fact, I just recently returned from the first board visit to China. And during our time there, among those we met with was a company in which CPPIB first invested in 2011 through the private investments team. And today it is the largest e-commerce company in China and one of the most valuable publicly traded companies in the world. Of course, I'm speaking about Alibaba Group. What we found at our visit to Alibaba was a brilliant example, and in some ways a frightening example, of how China is building its extraordinary competitive edge. While still early days, Alibaba has built an outstanding organization by developing, nurturing top talent, utilizing the most progressive technology, engaging strong partnerships, and thinking long-term. Critical to their success is benchmarking every one of these essential ingredients against the very best globally. They're leveraging these essential ingredients to help China's small and medium-sized enterprises to succeed. Their stated mission is to help the little guy. Investing early in companies like Alibaba is just one example of how CPPIB innovates to serve the interests of the Canada Pension Plan's 18 million contributors and beneficiaries. 2 years from now, Canada celebrates its 150th anniversary, and we have a great deal to celebrate. The question I want to address this morning is how do we ensure our success for the next 150 years? Success has many definitions. For me, the broad definition must include, as I mentioned earlier, both economic progress and social cohesion. The two are interdependent and are equally essential to nation building and prosperity. En effet, les succès passés du Canada, ceux qui lui ont donné son image mondiale, montrent que l'économie et le bien-être de notre population sont des priorités à long terme pour le Canada. Cette même dynamique doit continuer de s'appliquer dans les 150 prochaines années. This morning I'm going to ask two questions. First, how well is Canada doing when it comes to building the intellectual infrastructure that underpins innovation? And second, how do we make sure that this foundation is strong enough to support Canada's success over the next 150 years? So let's start by defining intellectual infrastructure. A good reference point and very proper in the context of the annual meeting of the CFI is the definition of physical infrastructure. That is the systems, services, and facilities that are necessary foundation for economic activity. Intellectual infrastructure also serves as a foundation for economic activity. It's a nation's educational capabilities, its ability to attract, retain, and nurture top talent, and its network of top-caliber research programs and facilities, the combination of which determine the nation's ability to innovate. Jeffrey Simpson aptly compared physical and intellectual infrastructure in a recent column in the Globe and Mail. He wrote, "Physical infrastructure is important, but brain power infrastructure is more important still." And I know that brain power flourishes when engaged, well-prepared people from diverse backgrounds work together in an environment that encourages the open exchange of ideas and of practices, and where participants from around the world bring further opportunities for learning and collaboration. C'est ce genre d'association qui permet de trouver de nouvelles solutions aux problèmes et d'élaborer de nouveaux produits et systèmes qui répondent à la forte demande mondiale. To optimally leverage the great physical infrastructure that CFI supports, it takes a commitment to intellectual infrastructure or talent. And to achieve the innovation upon which the future of Canada depends, it takes these two together. It takes two to tango. The best approach to building and maintaining the double-barreled innovation system is to stay ahead of the game. We're all familiar with the saying, follow the money. In the industrial age, finance followed industry. In the information age, as we know, finance follows talent, technology, and science. Most of us, I think looking around the room, all of us here are old enough to remember firsthand the creation of the internet. Now consider some of the technology and science disruptors that have emerged only in the last few years. Cloud technology, big data, the revolution in genomics being applied to benefits, mobile internet, 3D printing, advanced robotics, the Internet of Things. Like the advent of the information age, these disruptors are radically transforming how we work, how we play, how we learn, and people, neurocognitive developmental folks are starting to say even the way we think and how our brains are forming. Without question, these and other disruptors are transforming the global economy, and more to the point, they are transforming what will be required to compete and succeed in the global economy, the global community. We're Canadians, and we love hockey. So allow me to use a hockey analogy to describe the new competitiveness paradigm. We're now playing on faster ice, on a bigger rink, and the rules are changing every second. In this game, it is brains, and what we call in French, formation, not brawn, that will put us on the scoreboard. Let's go back to the definition of success I mentioned earlier, a definition that includes both economic progress and social well-being. From both of these perspectives, Canada is undeniably one of the most successful countries in the world. And yet we face a monumental task, both in maintaining what we have achieved and in making progress against challenges that defy easy solutions. In the interest of time, I'll mention only a few of these challenges. As we've already heard, demography is there facing us. Our population is aging rapidly. In 2006, there were just over 5 Canadians of working age, call it 15 to 64, for each person aged 65 and above. Roughly 40 years from now, when my daughter will retire, there will be only 2.2 working age Canadians for each person over 65 years of age, less than half what we have today. That's a rapid and steep decline in what is known as the old age dependency ratio. And many of our First Nations peoples, especially those living on reserves, are suffering from high levels of unemployment, low literacy rates, and substandard living conditions, and all of the social problems that come with these. We also have too many Canadians experiencing unemployment and underemployment. But by far, the biggest strain on our public finances is health care. Our spending is among the highest in the developed world, and yet we have persistently long wait times for basic services like emergency care and access to specialists and elective but important surgery. And we place all too little emphasis still on health promotion. In the meantime, healthcare costs continue to rise annually, and demands for wage increases among healthcare professionals continue unabated, setting up future showdowns with cash-strapped provincial governments and other competing causes. Finally, all Canadians, businesses, public institutions, and individuals alike face the challenge of reducing our environmental impact. The task of meeting these challenges is made more difficult in our country, which, though beautiful and having the second largest geography of any nation in the world, has a population smaller than that of the state of California, distributed along a long border, long cold winters, and a resource-dependent economy. With respect to Canada becoming an innovation nation, we are not Singapore, we are not Israel, we are not even Germany. That is why we need here in Canada a uniquely configured innovation ecosystem. Pour résoudre ces problèmes, nous devrons utiliser tout notre pouvoir d'innovation et tous nos réseaux de cellules grises. Cependant, il y a de bonnes nouvelles. Si nous investissons dans une infrastructure intellectuelle complétée par de solides infrastructures physiques, nous augmenterons notre capacité à trouver des solutions innovantes à ces défis économiques et sociaux, et nous acquérons un avantage concurrentiel sur le marché mondial. Let's spend a few moments taking stock of our intellectual infrastructure, in particular our network of universities and research facilities. These overwhelmingly underpin our ability to attract, retain, develop, and nurture top-tier talent. I'll start by touching very quickly on some of the factors that support Canada's intellectual infrastructure. Our universities provide excellent value for dollar invested, amongst the best in the world. They're the second largest performers of research after the private sector, notwithstanding that federal funding supports roughly 22% of the cost of this research versus 40 to 60% in the US, the UK, and Australia. Speaking of federal funding, CFI is a transformational contributor to the engine power of our universities, and its grants, as you've heard this morning, are funding groundbreaking projects. To name just a few other projects, whether it's research on the development of nanorobotics, water management, treatment and prevention of asthma, techniques to enhance crop yields, the diagnosis, monitoring, treatment, and prevention of work-related injuries and disease, or the secret life of indoor particles, one of my favorites. The Canada Foundation for Innovation is clearly doing the heavy lifting in supporting our country's intellectual infrastructure while simultaneously enhancing our economic and social well-being. It's no surprise that our post-secondary system scores well on global rankings. Among the OECD countries, we have the highest percentage of population going on to universities and colleges, and several of our universities are among the top 100 in the world. And though central, our strong network of post-secondary institutions and research facilities is only part of the intellectual infrastructure story. We also have a welcoming business climate with the lowest corporate taxes in the G7, a rock-solid regulatory and legal environment, the soundest banking system in the world, a top-tier credit rating, an economy with one of the best job creation records in the developed world, highly livable cities, a stable democracy, a high level of social cohesion and low level of income disparity relative to other countries, a multicultural and often multilingual workforce, and last but not least, an actuarially sound national pension system. However, despite the strong foundation, we're not doing as well as we should in critical areas. For example, business investment in R&D is declining as a proportion of GDP. The OECD scores Canada 22nd on its competitiveness ranking, and the World Economic Forum puts us in 26th place. In a similar finding, the Conference Board of Canada gives us a D on innovation, placing us 13th among 16 peer countries. Now, it may be human nature to believe we're doing okay. It may even be encoded in the DNA of Canadians to believe that we are doing okay. But these rankings suggest that Canada is resting on its laurels, and that means us, Canadians, are resting on our laurels. While a positive self-image is part of a healthy mind and can help one lead a successful life, this feeling of "I'm all right, Jack," puts us on the track where, as Marlon Brando might say, we are facing a one-way ticket to Palookaville. The world is changing too fast for us to look the other way. Our other nations are aggressively targeting their advancements in education, science, and technology, and building global networks. And Canada's challenges are too important and too urgent for us to continue to rest on our laurels. In today's world, there's no comfortable center. We move forward or we fall back. We don't have time here today to drop a blueprint for the next 150 years, but maybe we can do a quick sketch. First, we need to change the perspective and think, plan, and act long-term. This may sound like a platitude, the kind of thing that we say when we say we need to get more sleep. But if you think about it, modern life is dominated by short-term objectives and strategies, whether we're talking about the demands of investors for short-term gains and the resulting dearth of long-term capital, the decline in personal savings rates and the rise of personal debt in advanced economies, very much including Canada, the tendency of governments to base decisions on polls and election cycles rather than on sound public policy, and of public institutions to think too short-term to innovate now for the good of the future, or the tendency of managers to reject capital projects that create jobs and stimulate growth simply because they've overly discounted the value of future cash flows or other benefits from those projects. We live in an increasingly short-term world. There are notable exceptions to this short-termism. There is Australia in the Asian Century, a comprehensive white paper and active strategy by the Australian government that charts their course to the year 2025. And if you travel around the world, you see Australia everywhere. And I know our colleagues who've just come back from Chile have had exactly that experience. Closer to home, there is Focusing Capital on the Long Term, a joint venture by CPPIB and McKinsey & Company aimed at actively engaging corporate directors and business managers to place long-term value creation uppermost in their strategies and in their decision-making. An example of this important thinking and action is CPPIB's focus on Asia and other emerging markets in seeking out the long-term investment opportunities that best fulfill our mandate. That leads me to my next suggestion, which is for us, all of us in Canada, to be more outward-looking. Recently, Bank of Montreal's Vice Chair Kevin Lynch told an Ottawa audience that we're living in a two-speed world and the fast lane belongs to Asia. Yet Canada's trade relationships are overwhelmingly in the slow lane economies. 90% of our current trade is with the OECD and less than 5% with China, with its 1.3 billion population. Canada is a nation of newcomers with all the cultural and linguistic advantages that accrue from having a diverse population and workforce. It is time that we begin systematically leveraging these advantages fully for Canada in the global marketplace. The strength of Canada's innovation ecosystem depends on strategic networks of organizations, public and private, government and non-governmental, investing strategically in both our physical and intellectual infrastructure to optimize our innovation potential. If together with all our strengths in the liberal arts, we put more emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and math, and the so-called STEM disciplines, and if we enhance literacy in these disciplines from the earliest stages of child's cognitive development, if we do this, all else will follow. If we do this, our business enterprises and our public institutions will emerge more innovative, entrepreneurial, and leading edge, moving us to the cusp of advances in science, technology, and innovation that are transforming life worldwide. Then we will give current and future generations the means to build prosperity for themselves, their families, and their communities. It's worthy of note in this regard, and I recognize Dr. John Dirks as I say this, that of the 2014 Distinguished Canada Gairdner Laureates, the vast majority were recognized for basic science breakthroughs, which from just this year's class of laureates alone has already resulted in economic benefit of over $100 billion in profits and immeasurable gains in the quality of life and productivity. My final suggestion is that we never lose sight of the true meaning of prosperity. The most successful nations have the greatest social cohesion, the least income disparity, the least sectarian discord, and the lowest barriers to upward mobility. J'insiste sur ce point. Les nations qui réussissent le mieux affichent la meilleure cohésion sociale, les plus faibles écarts de revenus, le moins de conflits à long terme et le moins d'obstacles à la mobilité ascendante. En matière de prospérité, l'économie et le bien-être social sont les deux faces de la même pièce. Ne l'oublions pas lorsque nous posons les fondations du Canada pour les générations futures. Thank you very much for having me here today and for hearing my thoughts.